Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mach.
Hello, fantasy fiction fans and fantasy creatives everywhere, and welcome to Myth and Magic, the podcast for fantasy authors. And this week I've got an exciting show because I'm chatting with P. Grace Lawson, who's the author of The Rise of the Ravenisha, which is a fantasy fiction novel, and it's about breaking one's bonds and coming into one's own power. It's a wonderfully woven speculative fiction novel, including were-panthers, warrior women, ancient power struggles, corrupt experience, and of course, revenge. Hello, Pamela. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
It's lovely to see you. So it's some evening time here in London. I'm just west of London, near Windsor Castle. What about you? Where are you based at the moment, Pamela?
I am located in Elk Grove, California, and it's a suburb of Sacramento, California. And Sacramento is California's capital.
Capital, yeah. I've been to Sacramento. In fact, I absolutely loved Sacramento.
You have?
I have, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I wish I could say the same.
Yeah, I loved Sacramento. Yeah, I liked the blend of traditional. That I felt you could walk along a boardwalk and pretend to be, a cowboy, but also you've got the modern as well. I loved all that.
Exactly. It's very Midwestern in feel.
It does.
And when I first moved to Elk Grove, the reason I moved was because it was so rural. You could see the vaqueros riding their horses along the side of the road. But now if they tried to do that, they'd get run over. I mean, it's just the growth has exploded.
Wow.
And a lot of people are selling their farms.
Right. So when did you move there then?
Oh my gosh, it's a long story.
I know that you were raised in Talladega.
Exactly.
Alabama.
And I came out here to attend UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
And I did. My sisters followed me, and they also attended UC Berkeley. And we ended up in Sacramento because one of my sisters went to UC Davis Medical School.
Yeah.
And so we all just ended up here. Even our friends from Cal, that class was just a great class. They all got into UC Davis Medical School. And so we all just settled in this area. And I have been here ever since.
Wow.
So that's since, oh my gosh, I would say maybe 1990, if not before then. At this point, I have lived more years in California than I did in Alabama.
All right. So you consider yourself to be a Californian, at least in
No, I do not.
You consider yourself to be a Southern girl.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been very lucky because I've been to Birmingham, Alabama, which I absolutely adored, which isn't too far away from Talladega. Yeah. Well, I'm interested in some other work. In addition to being an author, I'm also a music journalist. So I've done the whole blues highway. So I've moved from Louisiana up to Memphis. Yeah. So anyway, part of that process was going to Birmingham. So I know a little bit about it. What I've noticed when I was in Birmingham, Alabama, apart from, it was very similar to our Birmingham, because we've got Birmingham here, which is the one is named after, and it's the metalworking industry. It's a very sort of industrial area. But the difference between the two is that your Birmingham, Alabama had loads of horses, and there was, everywhere I looked, there were horse riding facilities and horse studs and farms and things like that. So I know that horsewoman is in you. Horses are in you, aren't they?
Yes. I thought about that. I just feel a great longing for Alabama sometimes, hence my book, for some of the scenes in my book. But I don't know. I don't know if I could move back permanently. I think what I would like to do is turn our home into a writing retreat because, I I'm here in California where, the weather is just great year round.
Yeah.
And I will be in Birmingham in April, late April, and I'm already dreading, like, oh, how do I dress for that? Will it be humid already in April? And I don't know. I just the weather. I can't deal with that. I have to admit. I do not like the sun. I should be living in England. I love cold, rainy weather.
Oh, right. Well, if you like cold, rainy weather, yeah, you definitely should be living in the original Birmingham, as you call it. Yeah. Yeah. So, but did the southern rural landscape impact on you? And what I'm thinking about here is, did it actually impact on your writing or your art? Do you think that the landscape made a difference?
Mm-hmm. It absolutely did.
All right.
Just my upbringing, and I'm not sure how far back you want me to go, but just the opening scene with the women picking poke salad on the side of the road. That's straight from, well, not completely straight from my childhood, but I was in the car with my mother, and my mother was like, Margaret, pull over. There's some poke salad and wild onions. And she did. She screeched to a halt on the side of the road. And they got out, and I must have followed them, but they picked, the poke salad and the onions, went home and cooked them. And I remember being allowed to taste the poke salad, but I couldn't tell you what it tastes like now for anything. But that stuck with me. And when you go to Alabama and you see all of that red dirt, I wasn't feeling very great about it when I lived there, because it's no fun when you have white tennis shoes on or white clothes of any kind, and then the red dirt gets all on it. But now I'm just like, oh, I miss that red dirt. I miss all of the greenery and the pine trees and oak trees, pecan trees, just all of that. And so I tried to incorporate scenes that I remember from my childhood into my story. And that's why I said it in this fictional town called Ravenswood, Alabama.
Yeah, I saw that. And I take it that it's based, at least in some parts, on Talladega, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is it like your poetic vision of what Talladega could be like?
Exactly. If not Talladega, some other town, I would love it, for some developer to have the little downtown I envision. I mean, then that would entice me more to move back to Alabama.
There we are.
I am, because I do live so close to Sacramento, I am also close to Napa Valley. And that's, of course, my favorite places. And so I love the whole French food and the wine. The butcher's shops and the bakeries. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if somebody develop a town like that in Alabama, I would move there.
So you were brought up with how many sisters did you say you had?
I have two sisters.
Two sisters.
Yeah, I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Yes.
And did you have a reasonably, I don't want to say wealthy, but was it well-to-do upbringing?
No, it was very, very interesting. My father, who was 20 years older than my mother, like a country store.
Yeah.
And she worked at a textile factory. So we weren't poor, but we definitely were not rich. We were comfortable. In fact, people love to tell us when we go back now about how spoiled we were.
Yeah.
I remember, mother she had us taking piano lessons from an early age and going to charm school. And I mean, she did so much for us that a lot of families were not able to do. I remember she flourished and got us the whole set of encyclopedias, the same thing with the International Piano of Music. But then our world came crashing down.
Right.
When I was 11, both my parents died in the same year, not at the same time or the same month, but the same year. So one of my father's sisters took us in because her house, their family home was just down the road. And so we were very fortunate in that we were able to stay together as a unit. And so this is for our little community. Down the street was the church. Right across from my house was the school, which included elementary through high school. Down the road was our aunt's house. So what we would do every day we'd walk up and down that road. After school, we'd go to our house, and our aunt would have to call us and tell us, it's getting dark. You all need to be getting down that road. And it was walking up and down that road that really added to my weirdness, I think.
Okay.
Because when you live in a rural area, animals get hit and killed all the time.
True.
So when that happened, this is me, I had to go over and see the stage of decay. Whereas my sisters would just go on the opposite side of the road to try to get away from the smell and the scene. But nope, I would follow it until it had flattened completely.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yes.
So that is why you consider yourself to be, because this is your own words, by the way, a weird black girl before the term was coined.
Exactly. I don't know where, my mother loved horror movies. So when I remember growing up, she would pull out the bed couch. I guess they call it sofa bed these days.
Yeah.
And we would stay up all night watching these horror movies until, and I'm dating myself, until the television screen went staticky, and they would play the national anthem. So this was when television stations were not on 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that just stayed with me. And it also did, but not that I was a brave horror person. I have to tell you, I was so scaredy. Like she would send me to go tell my father it was time to come home. And I was nearsighted at the time. I didn't have my glasses yet. So, I saw ghosts. It wasn't even a far walk, but I saw ghosts everywhere. And so I'd run out of my house and to my father's store to tell him what my mom said, and then run back into the house, just knowing somebody was right at my back about to get me.
Wow.
And when I would have nightmares, my grandmother would tell me it was witches riding my back.
Oh, that's nice.
So
that helps.
I grew up. It's just, I don't know. It just seemed like that was just my destiny. And for the longest, I wanted to be a forensic pathologist, but college just smacked that down.
So what about horse riding? Did you do any horse riding lessons then when you were that old?
No, I was into horses because my grandfather, he had a farm, and I remember him riding this big white horse. Now that I think about it, the horse probably wasn't big. I mean, she was white, named Sandy. Yeah. She was probably a quarter horse.
Yeah.
But from then on, I must have bugged my parents, because then my grandfather, my mother's father, bought me a Shetland pony.
Lovely. Which can be brutes, by the way, can't they? They can be naughty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was just about to say. That horse booked me off every time I got on him.
Yeah.
Every time. And I must not have had good balance even back then, because I would fall off every time. So my father gave him to a family. It must have been 10 or 11 kids. I didn't start riding until I came to Sacramento, actually.
Right.
My youngest sister found the Black Cowboys in the Oakland Hills when we were going to Berkeley.
Yeah. And
she would ride, but I didn't like the way she would describe it, because she said they just put her on a horse and off she'd go all by herself. I'm just like, didn't you take lessons? And she's no lessons. I just go off exploring by myself. So I thought, oh no, I'm the type of person, I have to take lessons and learn how to do things right. So the same sister, when we were all in Sacramento, found a hunter jumper barn, and she would come home and showing us how to post and stuff. So I started riding at that same barn, and again, terror balance. I have no business whatsoever being on the back of a horse. My balance is just awful. And so I was falling so much, I had gotten to the point where I was jumping, and people will always tell me, oh, you didn't fall, you threw yourself off. It was no reason for you to fall. You ain't going over the jump. And I just listened to them, but I just never got it. And so what I did was some young girl at the bar and said, oh, maybe you should try dressage. That's what a lot of older women do. I only heard the older women. That's all I heard. Thinking of you little heifer. But I did, and I was hooked. So I do dressage, and we have a friend who moved up here, went to the medical school, and he's into horses. We actually started at the Hunter Jumper Barn the same week. So he's now moved on to gaited horses. So I've kind of moved on to gaited horses too.
Okay.
But they're not my only passion like his. I still like the dressage.
Yeah, that's lovely. And do you have your own horse that you ride all the time? Or
I don't have a horse now. I am so looking forward to getting the appropriate horse finally. I had 2 horses and neither one was appropriate for my level of riding.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So yes, I am looking forward to that. My family, not so much, because I understand it distresses them when I fall. And now I don't bounce back, as I used to. So
That's the problem.
Get hurt now. Oh my goodness,
That's the problem.
Really hurt. And I wanted to feature that in my book because I'm not sure if it's the area where I live, but of course I would be the only Black woman at the barn wherever I go. And, I'm kind of a fluffy Black woman at that. And I mean, instructors would be like, oh, you would ride so much better if you just lose some weight.
Okay.
So, yes. So now I have lost weight and gotten into better shape. So I just have to get my horses. But I don't care how bad I am a rider or how often I fall. I would probably never give it up until it gets to the point where I just physically can't get on. But, I'm sorry. I get off track. I start rambling. But my point was I wanted to have a writer in my book.
Yeah.
Because it just struck me being the only Black person out in these spaces. And a lot of the mothers would tell me, they knew exactly where their kids were when they dropped them off at the barn. They would be there all day, and just how the whole horse riding thing made them have courage and be resilient and learn how to take care of someone else or something else. And I thought, wow, that would be really great for a lot of Black kids too. Western is not that expensive. And just getting the trail horse, I mean, you don't have to do dressage or even go to a fancy schmancy hunter jumper barn. So, like I was at. So that's why I try to feature a couple of horse things in each of my books.
Good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Listeners might be saying, well, why is Neil speaking so much about horses? But in November last year, in the NaNoWriMo, I wrote a book about knights and knights in shining armor and castles. And of course, knights in shining armor ride horses. Now, I have got a bit of a horsey background myself. I used to manage a team of horses. So I've got some interest in it, but you just don't get enough, in my opinion, in medieval fantasies, you don't get enough study of the horses. They just plonk the character on the horse and off they ride. You don't hear about how they learn to do that or what happens when you fall off.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons I'm chatting to you about that. But it's very interesting.
I'm happy. I mean, in my second book, I have a scene near the beginning where the main character falls off during a jumping lesson.
Yeah.
And, I just, at least you all, I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure about England, but over here, they are just leaving no land, no dirt unturned. People are selling even their horse businesses and they're being turned into housing developments. Yeah. And that just breaks my heart.
For a quick buck.
Because I feel like you can't make any more land.
No, you can't.
And but if that's not the case for England, I may have to consider moving.
Well, without going into too much politics, we've got lots and lots of land, but it's all owned by 1% of the population, of course.
Oh God, that sucks. Such a fan of Queen Elizabeth. I love it whenever I see her on one of her ponies.
Oh yeah, I mean she's got enough. Yeah, she's got hundreds, but there you are. So I saw you were a fan of the folklorist and the author Zora Neale Hurston, and I couldn't help noticing that, and we've just discussed it, that you went into anthropology just like she did. So what was it in her writing which kind of impressed you and influenced you? Was it her politics, her outlook, or was it the actual craft of her writing?
It was the craft of her writing.
Right.
And I did not know about Zora Neale Hurston growing up. It was only when I got to college and took, the English class.
Yeah.
And so it was the first time that I had read a book written by a Black woman, and it was written in kind of, a Southern vernacular.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I mean, I like was Their Eyes for Watching God. And so that really made an impression on me. And at the time, I didn't know she was an anthropologist.
Right.
It was like,
So it's just coincidental that you almost followed her. I mean, because you went on to do quite high academic studies, just like she did. So, and then she went on to become a writer, just like you did. So that was corresponding career there, which you didn't know was happening until you got to Berkeley.
Exactly.
Wow. And what about Alice Walker? Was she? She's called the genius of the South. She? Did she trigger anything in you?
I have only read The Color Purple.
Okay.
So, and I thought it was a great book. The thing is that I read literary books, but my passion truly is horror. I read mysteries and thrillers.
Yeah.
I don't even read, to be honest, other fantasy books. Well, actually, that's not true. I read a lot of Laura K. Hamilton and J.R. Ward and people, Charlie Harris, people like that. But my reading interests are interesting, I think.
So I suppose we better wonder why you made a career change at the age, sort of like middle age, because what made you want to be a writer yourself rather than a consumer of literature?
Well, I actually am. I'm an avid reader. That's one of the things my mother instilled in me before she died. I mean, there were two couches in our room. She'd lie on one, I'd lie on the other, and we'd read a whole book that afternoon, and then switch.
Good.
And of course, these were books I probably had no business reading because I would have been under age 11 at the time.
Yeah.
But I remember my mother was a fan of Frank Yerby. And I'm up here reading about, the Saracen Blade and Jillian, and not realizing that these books were written by a Black man.
Right.
That blew me away. And now I've tried to find his books, but it's really hard to find them. But, I wrote for school assignments growing up, but I never, ever considered being a writer. Again, I wanted to be a forensic pathologist.
Yeah.
And all throughout college, I just wrote for
assignments.
Assignments, exactly. Yeah. But it was my last semester at Berkeley, and I was taking a medical anthropology class. And the class was assigned to write this paper on how we envisioned the world. And this was at the time when they were in a cure was being found for AIDS stage. Yeah. And so I'm sure the little perky TAs, I was just done with school at this point. So I was just tired of just being in school. So these little perky TAs gave us this assignment, which I was not happy about. I didn't want to do it. So I'm sure other people were writing, AIDS has been eradicated, a cure has been found. But no, I wrote about these scientists who used the virus and they kidnapped homeless men off the street. Now, this was before people got woke, before everybody be trying to come for me here. This was before the woke movement, but they kidnapped homeless people off the street and injected them with the serum, and they mutated into these monsters. So imagine my surprise when I got the paper back with an A, but also with a note that I should turn it into a book or a screenplay.
Excellent.
I did nothing.
All right. You decided to not take that advice.
Because I was still so invested in doing something in forensics. So I went through school. I even went through graduate school for anthropology and just drifted through life working. Oh my God. I learned about myself. I am not a person who can work admin jobs. I just don't, I'm not knocking people, but it's not me. I can't do it. And then it would also be bad when I would correct my bosses, their letters that they give me to type. So, I wasn't the most favorite person in the office.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of drifted into X-ray tech and ultrasound. And that brings me to the present. I was at a family reunion 2 years ago. in the Poconos in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I fell. I won't say what I fell off of, but you can probably guess. And I have never been in so much pain in my life. I didn't go to the doctor because, when you stereotyped as a strong Black woman, I'm just like, I can't walk. I can barely get out of bed to go to the bathroom, but this can wait. I'll go to the ER later. So, but to keep my mind off of the pain, I thought, well, what if there were these warrior women, and what if they shapeshifted into were-panthers that ate humans? And so when I got back to California, I was just like a woman possessed. I got up early every day. I wrote for 8 hours, and I was done with that rough draft in 3 months.
Wow. You became the were-panther of your imagination.
Yes. And this was at the time when I believe Black Panther was out. So I knew I wanted these African warrior women, but I didn't want them to be like the women in Black Panther.
No.
So I did some research on the real Amazons, and I thought, well, that is that I'm sure people have written about them, so I can't make them about the Amazon women in Africa. So I came up with the warrior women who were similar to the Amazons. In fact, I put a line in about the current king had taken over the village with his cadre of Amazon women warriors. And this in turn forced the women who had been out on a kind of a mission, it forced them to flee the village into the mountains. And that's where they made the fateful deal with La Panther Noir, and they were stabbed in the back by their BFF Queen Idea, and that was just a start of the story.
So the rise of the Ravenisha, is that how you say it?
Yes, Ravenisha.
Ravenisha is kind of set in modern day Alabama, but also Kingdom of Dahomey, is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, because I go back to the origins of how it is they came to be in Alabama.
Yeah, I like that. And you've got obviously were-panthers in it, and there is a historical connection or religious connection anyway, because totemism, putting a headdress on and then becoming the creature so you can fly, or putting a headdress on of a wolf and then you could eat your enemies. That is something which I think all across the whole world people have had that, and even to this day is a really big thing on TikTok, for example, people dressing up as animals and becoming the animal, so that's the were-panthers. The female warriors is about being strong and in control of your own destiny. Let's talk about the sisterhood, though, because you've got sisters, but not all sisters necessarily love each other, do they? There is obviously infighting.
Yes. It just so happens, though, because of our life circumstances, my sisters and I are very close.
That's
and
nice.
It's so interesting because when I was writing, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a story of me and my sisters. I wasn't thinking about that at all.
No.
And in fact, they are the characters in the story are different, but I would say, even though they're not blood sisters like my sisters and I are, they are their sisters.
Yeah.
They're very close to each other.
This is a sisterhood. Yeah, I wrote a book called The Sisterationship, which is about sisters, even though they're sisters not under the blood, they're sisters because they share the same social constructs and the same history, and those histories intertwine.
Yes. These women are as close as any sisters could be.
Mm. And did you feel that you were taking some of the things that you learned maybe the hard way in life and sort of like playing around with these concepts and trying to struggle to find answers and reasons?
Yes. And what's so interesting is that I did not figure that out until other people brought it up to me, like my niece. I was telling her about the story because I can't get my niece to read it.
Okay.
Or my nephew, but that's another thing I have to talk about. And she was like, Auntie, don't you see this? You know, you wrote this because you grew up in Alabama and during these times, and because of you and Mama, and you know, and Auntie, and I was like, no, I don't see the parallels. No, they're not there. What are you talking about? And then when she spelled it out, I was just like, oh, you are so right. But I was not thinking that when I was writing. Just like I wasn't thinking at the end, I realized that, wow, this story is about these women breaking their bonds and freeing themselves. And in a way, it's my story.
Yeah.
About me breaking my bonds and freeing myself and finally knowing what my purpose is. Because after I wrote the book, I got a couple, you know, some great reviews, and people would say, oh, Grace, which is my middle name.
Yeah, I know.
You have found your calling. This is what you are meant to do. You are a writer. You are a storyteller.
Yeah.
And before that, nope.
So that's another bonds that you've broken, isn't it? Because you've broken free of your expectations, or perhaps the expectations you think that your parents might have put on you, and become a storyteller, a tribal storyteller, which is massively important. In fact, it's the oldest and most noble career in the whole world, because without storytellers, we have nothing.
Yes, but I don't think my parents would have appreciated it. Because, you know, in the Southern family, you are expected it. If you expected to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a teacher.
Exactly.
If I had said I wanted to be a writer, they would have asked me, well, how are you going to support yourself? Exactly.
But the other thing that you've done is that you've perfectly explained in such a short and beautiful way what fantasy is all about, because a lot of people who don't understand fantasy, don't get into it, don't realize that we're exploring our actual world and our actual lives, but in a pictorial and a poetic way that makes sense to other people as they go through it. So people who read your story, they say, yeah, I can see those connections, even though you couldn't see them yourself, because they're there.
Yes, I could not. I mean, I tell people this is not the story that I sat down and write, but these are just words that poured out of me.
Yeah.
And, you know, my Generation Z nephew said he was not going to have any empathy whatsoever for Teddy or any of the other characters because they ate people.
Okay.
And I was just like, Kobe, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding. I grew up loving Dracula. Yeah. I didn't care if he sucked all of the blood out of humans. It never dawned on me to be like, oh, I hate Dracula because he killing people. No. Or I hate the Wolfman because he kills people. No, I love those characters. And so what it made me do is it made me introduce an element of empathy among the warrior women for having to eat humans. And I think in the end that made the story better.
that's lucky that he came up with that idea then.
Yes, but it's just the thought that, oh my God, these damn Generation Z kids.
Well, I suppose in some ways it's quite wonderful that they are thinking a little bit more deeply than we did. You're right. You know, I was brought up, I'm a little bit older than you, so I was brought up in the world of bang, bang, cowboy films, you know, where you have to shoot all the Indians. You know, there was nothing wrong with that. That was what we called Saturday morning pictures. Yeah. We didn't it didn't turn us into awful people. Another thing we had was in this country was very, very big was Zulu, which was the Zulu Wars. So in
British history, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
In British history, the redcoats went to Africa and they killed all these hundreds of. And of course, we always it's shown to us in the 60s when I was brought up as, you know, redcoats versus Zulus, and we are the goodies. but as you're watching the film, you know, it doesn't take much of a stretch to actually say, actually, I think we're the baddies in this, you know.
Yes.
So you're learning as you're going along.
Yes. But you still, I don't know, and I know this is probably going to go against what other people think. I just still feel like you should be able to enjoy movies like that. But be aware of the real history behind them.
Yeah. I think one of the great things about that kind of movie, even Cowboys, is that it does make a certain type of person, I'm not saying everybody does this, but at least a certain type of person may well say, actually, I'd like to learn more about the Zulu Wars, or I'd like to learn more about the 1880s in Wyoming. And they actually do go and learn rather than just make it up as they go along. Yes. So that's another thing about fiction, isn't it? Is that it introduces people in a nice, kind way and an entertaining way to actual their own history, which is, I think, it's one of our jobs that we should do as an author.
Yes, I pondered that, whether or not how much history I wanted to put, but I felt that as a Southern Black woman, I could not write a story without addressing slavery a little bit and the civil rights. I didn't want to be heavy-handed when I wrote the story, but it's just that this is what happened. These women got tricked into coming to America as slaves because they believed that their BFF was going to come there and they were all going to take over the country as Ravenisha. So somebody was obviously deluded. I mean, thinking they were going to take over anything as Ravenisha, the world, Africa, the country, but Queen Idea and the demon, like that was the purpose. And these women, because they were so close to each other, they believed their friend when she told them that, oh, I will be over there when the time is right and we will take over the world. And people ask me, well, if there are these were-panthers and they can eat people, why didn't they just free themselves? But first of all, yes, they could have killed the slave masters who bought them, but where then would they have gone? I mean, they would have been hunted down by, no doubt, the American army until the ends of the earth, if that happened. And then once they had children, the descendant, Rufus Honeycutt, he used them to keep the women under his thumb. In addition to, by that time, he had developed the technology to place these collars on their necks that could kill them if they tried to remove them. So when people ask me, well, why didn't they just leave? Why didn't they just kill Rufus? Because they were mothers. Rufus had their children. They didn't know where the children were. And as long as he had the children, they were not leaving.
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, it's about the sacrifices, that mothers make. But something happened later on when he wants to now take the new generation, Ravenisha, and make them into this super breed. In fact, he has kind of bred the new generation, or they are more superior than the old generation who first came here. But he wants to take it a step further, and now other nations want them, and other people want them, and Queen Idea wants to, well, no, she doesn't want them. She wants to kill them. Okay. Because she doesn't want to give up her power.
No.
So in a way, it's a book. It's also a lot about power, just how Rufus and Queen Idea are holding on to their power with everything they have. And the old generation, Ravenisha, are suppressing their power because, yes, who knows, maybe they could break free of the collars around their neck. But for the sake of their daughters, they're not going to do it. And the new generation, Ravenisha, are coming into their power. I look back now and I don't even know where the genesis for all of that came.
Speaks clearly to me that you're talking about slavery and bondage and about
yes, and now the time has come, for them to break free. It's like, that's it. He's taking their daughters, but dang if he's going to take their granddaughters.
Yeah.
And Idea, it's about time she had her reckoning. Yeah. So her beat down.
So I imagine then book 2, which I think you've finished, have you? Is kind of taking that to the next to the next level, is it?
Yes, it's called Rogue Ravenisha.
Yeah. And do the were-panthers also connect with their panther side? Do they have the skills of a panther? Because
they do.
Because a panther can track over a huge distance, and it takes its meal up a tree. And
and then I looked, they're also known as the ghosts of the jungle.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Come and go without being seen,
Yes. And I I love dogs. I love animals except for snakes.
Yeah.
And probably just all cold-blooded, just reptiles. But I love cats. And there at the time there was also this video that was showing this panther in Costa Rica at a zoo and playing, with one of the keepers. Now, I'm one of those people. I was like, oh, that's so cute. This would be me, Neil. I'd probably be somewhere out in the wilderness somewhere going, oh, it's so cute. What a cute little lion or a tiger before it pounced on me.
Before it pounced on you and tears your entrails out. Yeah. Have you ever been to West Africa? And if not, how did you do the kind of research on Dahomey?
Oh, I am going to take a trip.
Good.
I read some books, I looked on the computer, I looked at pictures. So I tried to do everything I could. In fact, after my rough draft was done for Rise of the Ravenisha, I had this professor read it. And she was just like, oh my God, these tenses are all over the place. This is so bad. I can't read this. And it wasn't like I did things like I was going or they was going. Yeah. The story, what I would do is, because I was just I had spit everything out on the page.
Yeah.
And I had put maybe up for one sentence, oh, they went to the store. And another sentence would say they were going to the store. Or another one might say they had gone. So I was just testing it out, trying to see which tense, but she was like, oh no. And then she also told me, and you need to do your research because I don't think what you have here about African religion is correct. Mm. So, it's a wonder that didn't crush me because, I'm an introvert and it is just the whole rejection thing. At any other time it would have killed me, but not this time. I went back, I did all of my writing in the same tenses. I did the research and gave it back to her to read.
That's good. What did she say after that?
She continued reading it. It was this interesting situation because fantasy was not her thing.
Yeah.
And I think now, I sent her a copy of the completed book. I think she would be very surprised because even the beginning is completely different. People might think, oh, characters are contrived, but I have always, even as a little girl in Alabama, attending a de facto segregated school, there were, like in my class, I think there was one white person. Right. But you know what? I was friends with that person. I was always open. I've had a pen pal since I was 11. And now she's German, and we visit each other. So for me, it was not, oh, I'm going to have a Native American or an Asian or, an Aztec character. No, that wasn't it. All of this came out through my interest in anthropology and the study of man. Yeah. So I do have an Aztec person who is also a shapeshifter. So, but for me, it's not anything contrived. It's stuff that is totally possible, as possible as anything can be in speculative fiction or fantasy world.
Yeah, that's a fair caveat. But also, I think that if you're living in a world which does have literally Native Americans, and you could meet an Aztec person, couldn't you? I mean, it's the same as the Amazons in the Greek mythology. They've done some archaeology, and they have found graves of warrior women, with those cuffs, So they do exist, There's everybody thinks that fantasy is a dream, but it's not necessarily a dream. There are elements of truth in it, and what we're trying to do as authors is explore those truths because they probably reveal even bigger truths.
Yes.
That speak to us.
Yes. And it's great when people can realize, oh, that's what you're doing. Yeah. It may be set in a world where nobody blinks an eye at the thought of were-panthers or vampires or, yetis, but there's still something relatable about the human experience that everybody can enjoy and realize.
Because all humans, unless you're very, very, very ill, all humans dream. All humans are scared of something. All humans have a sense that there is a bigger power above them. Yeah, we all share those. That's common. And yet all of those things sound like they're fantasy. And that's what I always say to people. Fantasy is here inside you. It is part of every human.
Yes. And I think that's something that my imagination has always helped me. I oh my God, talk about somebody daydreaming all the time. If I wasn't daydreaming, my head was in a book.
Yes.
It's just, I didn't use them. I did not use them those qualities growing up. It's only now. And I do wish that I had heeded people's suggestions years ago. But you know what? I also feel that, well, shoot, maybe I wrote at the right time, because if I wrote earlier, just right out of college, I wouldn't have the experience about horses.
No.
I wouldn't be able to write some of the things I wrote because I wouldn't have had the life experience.
Yeah.
So I'm old when I finally did write. But so was P.D. James, another one of my favorite authors.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was going to ask you what you think the pros and cons are, but I think you've answered that very well. Who is your audience? Have you got a target audience? Are you talking to yourself age 16, or are you talking to yourself age 20, or are you talking to somebody else, a dream person? That's a very good
question. The age range, I think, would be 16. I had said high school because one of my friend had asked if his daughter could read it, and she was only 9. I thought, no,
it's a bit hard.
There's cursing and goriness. 9 is too young, even if she is reading at an 8th grade level. So, but I see the reader as someone from 16 to maybe mid to late 60s. I'm not sure. Maybe there are older people out there who like fantasy, but the important thing for me is, and I don't want to limit my book to just one set of people.
No.
It's just the people who will read the book, I think, are people who like fantasy, people who like strong women, people who like horror. So it really encompasses a lot. I think there's something for a lot of people. Now, Christians may not like it.
Oh dear. Has it got a lot of like F words in it, or is it just?
Yes, surprisingly, the people who men have liked it. I do, and that's from my niece.
Okay.
Because she kept insisting. Oh my gosh, she went through this phase, and she still is kind of in it. Even now, she's about to be 25, where everything was F, 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 F. So Teddy is kind of based on her. And and there's a few studies that say people who curse are actually intelligent people.
I think the jury's out.
And it's actually, she does it, a lot of it is just out of defiance. So
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's done to upset your elders, but I always say that Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare didn't need to swear. They just made up a new word.
Yes.
So where would you like people to buy this then? So where's the best place to go to get The Rise of Ravenisha?
Oh gosh, I hate to mention Amazon, because it's just gonna put everybody out of business. But there's Amazon. There's a bookstore here where I live in Elk Grove called A Seat at the Table.
Nice.
They can order the book from there. If they go to my website at www.pgrace.com, there's a button they can click they can click the Amazon button to go to Amazon, or they can click A Seat at the Table's book. And I have told, worked it out with the owner that if someone wants the book autographed, all they have to do is add a note, and I'll go into the bookstore and autograph it before it's sent. It's also on Apple and Google.
In paperback form and ebook form?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
What about hardback? Have you done that?
Nope.
Okay. Well, you can do that on Amazon now.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Where should people follow you if they want to, follow your life?
Oh, Lord.
Inspired by you?
I'm just going to tell you, this is going to be bad. I can't tell you my handles, but I can tell you that if people just look up P. Grace Lawson.
Yeah.
And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Oh, okay, that's good. And are you quite busy on those?
No, I am not. Because again, I'm not really on social media, but I have somebody doing it for me. So he may be quite busy.
Okay, yeah, I get it. What are you actually doing the rest of the time then? So we've talked about this second book, and obviously there's a third book because it's going to be a trilogy.
Oh yes, it will be Revenge of the Ravenisha, and after that, I have a title in mind, Reign of the Ravenisha, Reigen. So hopefully the series will continue. And right now, I'm just working on revising the second one, Rogue Ravenisha.
Okay. Yeah. And is that going to be self-published, or you've got a publisher for that?
I don't know yet. It depends. I'm not sure. I'm trying to read more about publishing versus self-publishing.
Yeah.
My only thing is that I've read that with publishers, they can keep your book just on hold for years.
They keep you right. Oh yeah, that's right. And the other sort of like downside is that they may not put it in all the territories you want to go, because you'll probably want to go into Africa, and you certainly will want to go into Canada and Australia. They may not extend that far.
Yes, but definitely.
And certainly Europe. I mean, I'm quite surprised always how many readers I've got in countries which don't even have English as their first language. But there's quite a lot of readers there who love to read because they're interested in English. I'm talking about English as in the language, English language literature. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know. I might just do the self-publishing again because I like the artist that I got for my cover. But
I love your cover. I love it.
Learned that I may not have control over my cover if I get a publisher.
That's the other thing. They will put a cover on which they think is best for you, not the other way around. Yes. Yeah, I love your cover. It reminded, obviously it's there's a whole load of energy in it, but it reminded me of seeing a panther drink from the water hole, and even though she is lifting herself out of the, and that's, you've got the lifting out, you've got, she definitely looks threatening. So
yes, I like that.
Well, congratulations on a really exciting book, and I started reading it this afternoon, so I'm going to continue with it because it's the kind of thing which I really like, because it's got the things I want to have in a book, which is strong, independent women and were-panthers and a bit of revenge. So I love all that. I love all those things.
Remember, it's a debut novel, and I know that it has its issues, but I will say Rogue Ravenisha is tons better. At least that's what people have told me too. It is way better. I'm
glad you're doing that, because you're probably not even a proper author until you write the third book.
Yeah,
you've got those coming.
Yes,
that's what makes the difference.
Better.
Yeah, yeah. But everybody's got to have a first book, haven't they? And I wrote my debut novel like you. I wrote mine about 5 times, and I even published it, and I still wasn't happy. So I rewrote it and then republished it. And I think we all go through that. But that is part of art, isn't it? If you look at some of those beautiful paintings done by somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, they X-rayed these paintings, and they found that he went over the top of another painting, which he obviously was unhappy with. That is part of creativity. It's part of our processes. So don't worry too much about that. And I'm looking forward. Well, I've loved everything I've read so far, and I love your writing style. So congratulations, and I'm looking forward to reading all of the whole trilogy.
And thank you for contacting me. I have actually been listening to your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
And I have learned. Yesterday it was the one about the 7 things that readers don't want to see or hear from us.
That's definitely worth reading that one.
You have someone on where they're discussing horror, so I'm going to listen to that one too.
Yes, do. Yeah, maybe Pamela, you could come back would you like to come back and talk about your second book?
For sure.
Oh, brilliant. In the meantime, you look after yourself and keep very safe. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.